Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome into the RTI Lowdown podcast. I'm Ryan Schumpert. Pinch hitting tonight for Bob Baskerville. He's got some family activities on a big graduation weekend, but another big weekend for Tennessee baseball and more Tennessee athletics to get into. Joined, as always, on this program by Chris Lowe. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for sitting in. We really appreciate it. Always good to have a member of the Rocky Top Insider pinch hitting. Bring you in on the bullpen for Bob. But no, it's great. And it's it's that time of year when you got a lot going on. Tennessee pretty much put the final touches on its portal class in hoops. You got the women's SEC tournament going on, the baseball tournament coming up in Hoover here in a couple of days. Tennessee going to be the 10 seed, winning, locking itself in with two of the three against Oklahoma. I felt like probably going in, they probably would have gotten in anyway had they gotten swept, but they could have put themselves in sort of peril, Brian, because teams that were bid stealers in leagues could have potentially knocked them out if they only had 13 wins. But to get to 15-15 in the SEC, they're absolutely locked in. Probably not going to host unless they make a really deep run in the SEC tournament. And I've seen projections from maybe they go to Georgia Tech. We'll see. But, from your perspective, when you look at this team, probably one of the more improved teams in the league over the last half of the season from where they were. And it's not all good because Landon Mack, their third-day starter, still a bit of a question mark with arm soreness. I think he's going to have some more tests run on Monday, maybe an MRI to sort of see what's going on. They just don't know about him right now, what his availability will be. I sort of doubt we see him in Hoover at all. Remember, it's a single elimination. But, boy, it will be, to me, it would be huge for Tennessee to get him back for the NCAA tournament, to have that solid third-day guy as a starter.
No doubt. And, I think the Landon Mack is kind of the dark cloud that hangs over what's been a really good couple of weeks for Tennessee baseball. And the way the offense is performing these last couple of weeks, it's pretty easy to see a team that could make a run in the postseason. But you knew they needed Landon Mack to do it, and you've been reminded of it the last 2 weeks. The two starts that he's missed, you knew it was going to be a bullpen game. Taylor Tracy against Texas doesn't get out of first inning. Chandler Day against Oklahoma on Saturday, granted with very little help from his defense, who had a rare bad day behind him, but doesn't get out of the first inning. So Tennessee is short on arms to begin with, and the Landon Mack, they need him. They need, even if he's not at his best, they need him to be able to throw some innings for them. And the thing about Hoover that I've seen some people point to, and even I thought that made some sense, but you really start looking at it. Tennessee's gonna play their first game on Tuesday. You mentioned it, single elimination now. Feels unlikely with where Tennessee's pitching is that they're gonna win more than 2 games there. And if you were going to use them in Hoover, I think you'd want to use them on Tuesday. But then you look at a regional schedule and the fact that they had, even before he got injured, moved Landon Mack into that Game 3 starting role. It's all of a sudden, if you're willing to throw him on Tuesday, it'd be an 11-day difference between him throwing on Tuesday and him turning around and throwing again in the tournament. So if you were going to build him up to throw on Tuesday, you would then have to have him throw a bullpen in the week before and or in the week between SEC tournament and a regional. So I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for Tennessee to push Mack. Continues to be kind of the big question mark around this team, but give him plenty of rest and, hope that some of that arm sore, those tests come back with good results, and some of that arm soreness resides. And the next, almost really 2 weeks as we record here tonight would be the next time Tennessee would need him to throw.
Yeah, and again, Tennessee will probably know more tomorrow, Tuesday. As I said, team's going to leave tomorrow to go to Hoover. I think there will be some type of test or MRI to just sort of get a better feel for what's going on. He's had soreness now that's plagued him. for a couple of weeks and, missing, as you said, the last couple of starts. So probably we'll have more information. You're right. They're not going to push it. And it's because if you could certainly have him ready to pitch in the regional, which you're talking about, that's going to start you can start either that Friday or that Saturday after the SEC tournament, depending on what the schedule is. Tennessee probably not going to have to travel too far. Usually they try to keep teams pretty close when you're not the host team. So, again, I've heard Georgia Tech. I mean, where else have you heard, Ryan? Georgia Tech seems to be the one that a lot of people have pointed to as far as Tennessee going.
North Carolina, I think, is the other popular one. I think the interesting thing to watch there, because you're right, I don't think it'd be a real surprise. Tennessee would have to make a really, really deep run in Hoover to host. But what's different this year, you go back to 23, Tennessee, maybe the second or third team out of hosting, and they get sent to Clemson, who I want to say was number 4 overall seed, maybe number 3. And in the past, it's been, if you're a 2 seed, it doesn't matter whether you're 17 or 30, 36. They'll throw you with anybody. It's a little bit different this year. They're going to seed every team 1 through 36, and they're not going to, it's not going to be one playing 36 necessarily, but 1 through 4 would then play one of 36 through 33, right. Then 5 through 8, 32, 29, and onward. So you look at Georgia Tech, who's probably going to be number 2 overall seed, North Carolina, who could be 3 or 4. Those are the natural tie-ins for teams that are close regionally to Tennessee. And I think right now Tennessee would probably still be in the back half of the 2s. At least it would be very easy to justify that if the committee wants to, which they're still probably going to do that as they want to. So if Tennessee does make a run, even if it's not enough to host, I think it'll be interesting for maybe Tennessee potentially playing themselves out of having to go to Atlanta, which would obviously be a nice, easy trip, but against the Yellow Jacket team that's been top 3, top 5 in the country really the entire season.
Yeah, and Tennessee's played such a hard schedule. I mean, when you play in the SEC, I don't think Tennessee's going to be scared of competition wherever they go. I was at that regional in Clemson a few years ago, and Clemson was rolling a really good, talented baseball team. And, that Tennessee team, what was their record that year in the conference? Pretty close to what it is this year, right?
Yeah, I think 15-15. I want to say maybe 16-14 is what they ended at within a game for sure.
About the exact, and they go in there, and of course they play that unbelievable game, that marathon 14-inning game, and win and get out of that regional, and still had to travel in the super regional. So to me, who they play and where, I don't think it's a big deal. A bigger deal is getting somebody to step up in the bullpen, really a couple of guys, or getting Landon Mack back healthy, because this team has hit in the second half of the season the way you need to hit going into the postseason. They're up and down the lineup too. I mean, you look at sort of where some of these guys were average-wise, power numbers to start the season, even the first 2 or 3 series of the SEC, and where they are right now, it's been night and day. Levi Clark, I saw your tweet, what he has done in the SEC part of the schedule. He's completely transformed. Reese Chapman has been a stud all year long for Tennessee, and other guys have come up with big hits. Even Henry Ford was scuffling a little bit there the last couple of series, but boy, you look at him over the course of the entire SEC season, and he's been their best hitter. So I think having guys that have sort of stepped up and hit well when other guys haven't has been sort of the hallmark of this team as they've turned it around in the last half of the season. Because I really believe, Ryan, that, you got to have pitch, you got to be deep to make a run. But so many times you see once you get into the postseason, teams overcome that because they're scoring 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 runs. And, boy, you got to be able to do that. I mean, you got to be braced to score double-digit runs a lot of times, especially when you get in, past maybe your first guy going and your second guy going, and neither team has, deep pitching. So I think that's the key. Tennessee is hitting at a clip right now where you look at them and say, hey, this team can score 8, 9, 10, 11 runs. And have a chance to win, even if their pitching is not outstanding.
No doubt. I mean, you don't have to look as a Tennessee fan far, just back to the 2014. Your Friday night opening series opening Omaha combo was a starter in Chris Stamos, and then going to a guy in AJ Causey who was good for them for most of that year, but wasn't very good in the NCAA tournament. And certainly Xander stepped up, but it was very much piecing it together on the mound in an offense that led the way. And certainly this offense is not what the 24 offense was and doesn't have the star power. But I think what you said is exactly right. Like, we'll get all SEC teams on Monday. I don't expect that we're going to see a ton of Tennessee hitters on that, but it's been 7-8 guys that have, you look at their overall SEC numbers, are pretty darn good. 5 guys that have hit 7 home runs in SEC play. Trent Grenlinger, I think, has changed a lot since he came on, really starting in Mississippi State that series, which was their 5th series as an everyday starter. And I think it's pretty easy to point to that series as certainly when Tennessee turned this season around, but really their offense started to find its footing. And Blake Grimmer's been steady for him. Reese Chapman has just had an awesome senior year. I don't think when he decided to, didn't get drafted, decided not to enter the portal, decided not to sign an undrafted free agent deal, I don't think Tennessee could have hoped for him to be much more than he is. And, maybe Henry Ford and Blaine Brown haven't quite had the star power that Tennessee had hoped entering the season or when they got those guys in the portal. But they've had a lot of different guys step up, and it's been a dangerous lineup pretty much 1 through 9 this back half of SEC play. And, one that I was running some of the numbers on just how many runs they've scored in every SEC series: 25, 27, and 29 with the Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama series. Those are their 3 best in SEC play coming the last month of the year.
Yeah, I think Ford will hit. I think it's sort of been a little bit of fluke that he's hit some balls hard. But I think when you look at his numbers over the course of this season, he's the guy that will come through for him. And but again, it's the fact that they've been able to hit all the way up through the lineup. Look at what Manny Marin. I know he didn't play, but look at what he did this last couple of series. So I mean, when you have guys in that 6, 7, 8 hole that are coming through for you, that's what you got to have. And I think the outlier too, defensively, this has been a really good team. Now they booted around and kicked it around in that last game against Oklahoma, uncharacteristically so. But they've been able to lean on their defense just about all season. And just because they did in that last game or did not in that last game, I think that's something too that will be a strength. We always look forward, Ryan, to doing this show every Sunday night, the RTI Lowdown. And again, thank you for sitting in. And we certainly want to thank our sponsor all year long, Tate Insurance Group, right here in Knoxville, local, independent, trusted. They're my insurance group. I've been with them now for a number of years. We've got my car insurance with them, my homeowner's insurance with them. 865-862-8233, the number to call. Again, 865-862-8233. Just recently had them reach out to me. They were just and they do this quite often. They were sort of running my numbers, looking at sort of what some of my deductibles were, what I had in car and insurance. They reached out to me, gave me a couple options, actually saved me money on my premiums. That's sort of part of their service, which I was really grateful for. So again, home, auto, life, business, health, whatever, one-stop shopping, Tate Insurance Groups. I know Scott Tate for years. Our kids played sports together, basketball together when they were little, and he's a friend and certainly has been somebody there with his staff there at Tate Insurance Group that I've leaned on and trust implicitly, and I would implore you to give them a call. So we're going to do some talk a little more baseball. We're going to try to bring in. We're going to talk some hoops too. Tennessee now looks like they've got their roster ready. I guess there could always be. They still technically have one more spot, Ryan, the Brick Orange Club. Are they full?
My understanding is that they're full with the.
Okay.
They had the 2 former walk-ons and Gavin Paul and Campbell Duncan. One of those guys was on scholarship last year, so or counted towards the roster spot. So still will going into next season. So as far as I know, they're full at this point.
Well, he's put together, Rick and his staff put together an incredible portal class on paper, and I'll say that because everyone's so excited. I think it's rightfully so about what this team will look like. But now you got to get them to gel. You got to get them to play together. They've been able to do that. Rick's been able to bring in guys like Chaz Lanier and Dalton Connect this past year, Jacoby Gillespie, and sort of fit those guys in. They've not brought in this many people, though, guys that are, 4, 5, 6 guys are all going to be the leaders in the team. But the guy who started all of it, that sort of started this portal hall, Tyler Lundblade, we hope to catch up with him in the show later on, and just a fabulous shooter out of Belmont. If you've ever seen any clips on him shooting the basketball, if they made a sort of a video on how to catch and shoot, no wasted energy, no wasted motion, quick release, he is the epitome of that. And I know that Rick Barnes and the staff are really fired up to get him, a guy that averaged 3.5 threes a game. But to have that sort of what they call the those no-leave guys that you just can't leave them. If there's a Terrence Hill or whoever's penetrating, you can't cheat off that guy because he's going to burn. He's going to make you pay. And look forward to talking to him. You cover that team as closely as anybody. I know you've covered this whole portal hall. As they put it together, Ryan, as they put this, and granted, it's going to be a different looking team. You're going to have a lot of guys that are more 2, 3, 4s out there, guys that can shoot, guys that can score. What sort of jumped out at you at what they were able to do and able to sort of stack up guys that can get their own points?
Yeah, I think it's two-parter. One, I think it's the buy-in that they got from a number of guys that, they went out that first weekend the portal was officially open. They could bring guys in for visits, and you land a commitment from Day Ames, who played a ton of point guard last year at Cal and averaged 17 points per game, and really scored at a high clip and had the ball in his hands a ton, and as a true combo guard. And then to go out and get Terrence Hill, a week and a half later, get him on campus and be able to beat out Kansas to land him. And I think at least myself, monitoring, it didn't seem like there was ever any surprise. I don't think they were telling Day Ames that, all right, you're coming in and you're the lead point guard and it's all going to be your show. They got guys that were the go-to option at their other school, so their previous schools, to buy into being a part of a talented group. I think Jalen Harrelson's a great example of that. You're talking about a guy that was a McDonald's All-American, was the lead guy at Notre Dame last year as a freshman, averaged 17, 18 points per game. And, he's probably, if you're going through it, he's the third or fourth guy you would mention with Tennessee's transfer class. So I think that's a big part of it. Another one, I just think the Tennessee was, and it was much to the chagrin of Tennessee's fans last year, with Tennessee playing those two big lineups, but they were kind of ahead of the trend. Arizona did that, Michigan did that, certainly did it at a higher level, did away to the Final Four, and Michigan did a national title. And you win a national title that way. Florida sort of did it 2 years ago, a little bit different, but had the ability to play that way. And then you saw this offseason. That's how everyone wants to build their team. And Rick Barnes, who I think continues to impress with just his flexibility at the end of his career, said those guys are so expensive, we're going to go the opposite direction with this thing, and to bring in so many guards. And I think there were a number, they end up bringing in 2 big men, or really 3 big men, 2 true centers, and Christian Furman from VCU being the final piece to the puzzle this week. But a number of Zooms and meetings with some other big men that were going to cost a pretty penny, and Tennessee felt like they could, Moneyball would be a dramatic way to say it, because certainly Tennessee's spending a lot of money on their roster, but they said we can spend it maybe a little bit different way than everybody else is, and in the margins gain an advantage. And I think that they did a really good job of it. But as you said, a lot of the challenge comes now as they get these guys to blend together and play well on the court together. And I think that aspect and how they grow in that way over certainly the next 5-6 months before the season starts, but especially when the games get started, it's going to be really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I know the staff did a lot of intel over and above just basketball on all the guys they brought in, which is not surprising if you know Rick Barnes and know the way he runs his program. There were some guys they could have brought in that the intel just didn't stack up, didn't add up, and they sort of said thanks but no thanks. And so all these guys are guys that he and his staff were all in agreement on, guys that they feel like will be good in the locker room, and guys that will share the basketball, because when you look at as many guys that are, 14, 15, 16 point plus, Juke Harris all the way up to 21 point per game scores, well, you worry sometimes that there are enough shots to go around. Well, I don't think as they evaluated these guys, that they felt like these guys were what I call shot counters, more concerned about how many shots they get up, than they are winning basketball games and getting it to the open guy. The best players, the great ones, are the ones that want to play with those guys because they know they're going to get better shots. Maybe they don't get as many shots, but they're going to get better looks at the basket. You mentioned the Day-Day Ames, Terrence Hill. Those guys are going to create, a Tyler Lundblade. I mean, you can't shadow him because if you do, those other guys, and then Juke Harris is a guy that can get his points a lot of different ways. A terrific finisher around the rim. He can shoot the three. He can put the ball and create. I like his mid-range game. You don't see as much of that anymore. So I think, again, you've got guys that can score in different ways. And if you think back to last year's team, rarely, if any, Ryan, again, you were there for just about every game, did they have more than two guys on the floor at once who could go get their own shot? Well, they're going to have 4 or 5 at times. Now, that doesn't guarantee you anything. Again, you got to gel, you got to play as a team. Guys have got to sort of settle into their roles and learn to play with each other. Again, and I'll stress this, it's a different deal to bring in a Connect, bring in a Jacoby. Jacoby ran the show last year. The ball was in his hands, 85, 90% of the time. Or bringing a Chaz Lanier, who was a shooter, and sort of plug those guys in, and everybody else sort of adapt to them. Well, now you're bringing in, you may have a lot of times 5 guys on the floor that weren't in the program last year. They're all learning to play with each other instead of just one guy sort of learning 3 or 4 new guys, existing players. And that's a different dynamic. That can be more difficult. And I'll be fascinated to see when they all get on campus this summer how quickly, they can gel. I certainly want to also give a shout out to Karen Weekly's the Lady Vols softball team. They get out of the regional. They beat Virginia today. They're going to play Georgia in the super regional. Starts on Thursday on campus. And again, Karen's, you start talking about the softball, baseball / combo at Tennessee. And it's hard to find one in the league over the last however many years that have been as good when you throw both of those teams in the mix as baseball and softball at Tennessee. So they get out of the regional. They beat Virginia today. They will play, I think that first game's on Thursday against Georgia.
Yeah, 4th straight trip to the Super Regionals for Lady Vols softball. And, I don't know, reputation would be the right word because Karen Weekly's been there a really long time and has had a ton of success. But, there was a couple year stretch there where they were in a little bit of a rut and struggling to get out of regionals. So to do that now, 4th straight season, to your point with the diamond sports in general, Tennessee baseball going to try to look to make it 5 here in a couple of weeks for them to make it to the Super Regionals. But a team that is a very up and down year, but feels like they found their stride again late, and certainly very, very capable of making a 3rd straight trip to Oklahoma City.
When you have good baseball and softball programs, it really, to me, stretches out because everybody's into football and basketball, obviously, but it stretches out the sports calendar for fans, for fan bases, and you've been able to sort of see that over the last, as you say, the last 4, 5, 6 years. There's an excitement, once you get into March and April and May, once the basketball season's in late March, you got April and May on into June, which, when you don't have good baseball and softball programs, that it almost seems like a drought. I know talking to other friends of mine, fans, people who cover the sport, that it becomes, that's a long 4 months or 5 months until you start preseason camp in August. If you really don't factor in much into in the league races and the postseason, you get into late April and May and June and July, and there's just not a lot to get excited about. So I always go back to when Tennessee was not having as much success, certainly in football. And of course, Rick's basketball team's always been. But what Vitello did with that baseball program a number of years ago, really in a lot of ways, things just seemed stagnant on campus. And for them to get going the way they did in baseball, and as I mentioned a minute ago, what Coach Weekly's done with softball, it just means really you got about 2 months off, and everybody's sort of engaged for 10 months because of the longevity of those seasons, and because those teams are doing so well that really you're talking about the latter part of June and July, and preseason camp starts in August. So kudos to both those programs. You mentioned the Diamond programs and what they meant. And of course, let's shout out to the rowing team too, and what they did. I know that's probably it's not a mainstream sport, but still, to have the kind of season they did, kudos to them and kudos to those young ladies.
Yeah, and Vol Golf, I believe, out in Bryan, Texas, at College Station, for the NCAA tournament getting started. I want to say tomorrow. So some fun postseason stuff, and yeah, I think the way the calendars work too, and that when you play with the overlap in the seasons, when basketball plays as long as they have these last 4 years, making a second week in a tournament, by the time basketball is over, you're almost halfway through the SEC slate for baseball. So it's not like you're jumping in and they're playing Wright State or Nichols or something like that in February. You're kind of jumping in right at the time where it's starting to heat up, and when the calendar falls a certain way and Tennessee plays super late in the season, it's almost really 7 weeks between the time baseball can end. Obviously goes a week later than softball, but the time baseball can end and fall practice gets started, and you throw SEC Media Days, which obviously doesn't have the buzz that it used to, but still the unofficial start to football season right in the middle of that too. It makes college athletics feel like a much more year-round deal and not just a fall, winter, early spring thing to follow.
You mentioned football. We'll hit some football here. And again, we're going to try to catch up with Tyler Lundblade here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Quickly, as you look at this team, had a chance to talk with some of the guys, some of the coaches this week over there on campus. I know that there's a lot of attention on the quarterback. Is it going to be Brandon? Is it going to be George McIntyre? I think Brandon is the guy unless he does not play well in preseason. If he has a bad camp, or if McIntyre just plays lights out. I think coming out of the spring, the way I would put it is Brandon has positioned himself nicely to be the starter. He's still got to go lock it down. You can't fool the players. Let's remember Josh Heupel played quarterback. He understands the importance of the players around the quarterback buying into that guy. They know who's the best guy, the guy who gives them the best chance to win. Yes, he's a freshman, but as Josh Heupel's told me now a number of times, he played a true freshman the entire season in Dylan Gabriel when he was at UCF. So he is not going to play Faison Brandon simply because he's a true freshman if he's the best guy. That's still to be determined. I think the other thing, Ron, and I'll ask you your opinion on this, is I look at the defense, and there's some excitement about what Jim Knowles brings, his ability to create havoc. Right there in the middle of that defensive line, though, they're going to have some guys grow up and some guys step up who haven't played a lot of snaps in the middle of that defensive line. Where do you think that is, and how important do you think that will be for this defense to get some of those guys to step up and be impact players this year?
Yeah, I think obviously quarterback is going to draw the most conversation and debate, and until someone comes in there and proves that it's going to be the most important position on the field. But I almost look at Tennessee's roster as the biggest concern on the defensive line. And more than anything, it's just the depth. There's some guys to like, and Xavier Gillum and David Hobbs. But like you said, you kind of get behind those guys, and it's who's there to be able to step up. And same thing at strong side defense end. There's just not a lot of guys that have proven they can do it in the SEC. And you saw it last year where Tennessee kind of went into fall camp a little thin at defensive tackle. Well, they very quickly had 2 defensive tackle injuries, and that became about the biggest storyline the first half of the season. So I think there's reason to be optimistic about what Jim Knowles can do in his first year with his first defense. I like a lot of the depth and the pieces they have in the back seven, but this is SEC's a line of scrimmage league, and certainly Tennessee still has a lot of question marks there, especially in the interior that like you said, some young guys that haven't done it are going to have to step up. And that doesn't mean going out there and being all SEC next year, but it does mean coming in and playing 40 or 20 to 30 snaps a game and being able to really contribute.
Yeah, I think when you think of tackle, I think the Utley kid, the Campbell kid are both guys that have talent that they're going to need to play, like big-time SEC interior guys this year. Those are two guys they're going to really need contribution from. They really like the Metcalf kid on the back end, the safety from Michigan, and what he brings to them. I think that may be, if I look right now, what's the strength of this team? I think the secondary has a chance to be really strong with some depth, give Jim Knowles a chance to do some different things on defense. And they just haven't been real good at safety the last few years. They didn't tackle well. They've given up some plays that have been killer type plays. I think what they've been able to do in the portal, you got Redmond coming back at corner. He's got a chance, I think, to really take a step and be one of the better guys, a lockdown type of cornerback. I think this team will tackle better. They're going to have to. They're going to have to tackle better in space. We hear about playmakers all the time, and usually you think about playmakers on offense. Well, the same goes for defense too. You got to be able to make plays in the open field. And the teams that have a chance to make a run for the playoff, typically those defenses have those guys that can make plays and make tackles in the open field. And I think they feel better about their ability to do that in the defensive secondary this year than they did last year.
Yeah, I think Kayan Lee, the transfer from Auburn, has a good chance to be as undervalued of a transfer as Tennessee brought in, and certainly they've struck gold there the last 2 years with Jermon McCoy and Colton Hood last year, and high bar talking about those two guys. But a chance for Lee to be a big time contributor as well.
Yeah, he's the other one with Metcalf. I think you'll see him play the nickel and has the ability to play a couple different spots. But that's, you've got to have those guys, certainly guys that can move around a little bit, guys that have played. They feel really good based on what they've seen to this point through the spring with both Metcalf and Lee. Because, it's different now. What you got's what you got. You can't go out and get anybody because there is no spring portal anymore. So if you're a corner short, if you're a safety short, whatever, you got to be able to coach these guys and have them ready to go come preseason camp. And that is different. And, of course, Tennessee's not – all teams face that now. But you think about sort of what they've been able to do in the spring portal. Think about last year if there's no spring portal. There's no Joey Aguilar. And what a difference that made. Well, same way with the other positions this year, there's not the ability to go get somebody to add to your roster. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this year with teams because, you have a decent feel coming out of the spring, Ryan, where you're a little bit lean at positions. Maybe someone gets hurt or someone's not been healthy. So in the past, you had a chance to go sort of solidify positions. You can't do that now.
Nope, it's a completely different deal, and certainly from the injury aspect, it changes your flexibility. But will be an interesting summer, and certainly as we get closer to fall camp for Tennessee football. But going back to the hardwood, happy to be joined by Belmont transfer Tyler Lundblade. Tyler, appreciate you joining us on your vacation tonight, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time, Tyler. We were just talking. You're the guy that started it all, man, with this class. I mean, I remember talking to Coach Barnes and what he was looking for, and he said, I stood there and watched the second half of that Michigan game, and we didn't have the firepower offensively. I knew we had to go get better, guys that could shoot it, guys that could get their own shot. And he said, we didn't need to get two of them. We need to get a bunch of them. And you were that first guy. Take me back to that recruitment and what his message was to you. I know the whole staff took you to the baseball game. Sort of what was his message to you?
Yeah, it was a huge blessing, honestly, because I was able to get in early as a grad transfer. And so, selfishly, I had the luxury of kind of being the only guy in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have to really make any kind of rushed decision. And so I was able to go through kind of my process, you would call it. But for me, it was so clear it was Tennessee the whole time. From the first conversation I had with Coach, he made it really clear that, how they wanted to use me, what they were bringing me in for. And, all the basketball stuff was great, but honestly, like having Coach Barnes, Hall of Fame coach, but Hall of Fame mentor. And, the first conversation we had was probably 30 minutes about basketball in Tennessee, and then another 30 minutes about his faith, my faith, his journey as a coach. And it was just super clear for me that Tennessee was the place to be. And now I guess back to the basketball stuff. Yeah, I think you're right. There was a clip that went kind of viral of Gino Auriemma and Dan Hurley talking about if you got a team full of 1,000-point scorers, you can win a lot of games, and I think that was the strategy this offseason. And I think we've done just that. We brought in a bunch of guys that can score the ball and are dangerous, and I think the beauty of it is we all do different things. I don't think we really have two similar players in a sense, and I think that makes us really diverse, really well-rounded, and on any given night you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that can go get you 20. And I think those are teams that win late in the year when you got to have different guys step up. And I just couldn't be more excited to be a part of it.
I'm curious, Tyler. It was, you mentioned it. You commit before the portal even opens. Portal opens. Tennessee loses 6 guys to the portal, ends up adding 8. Yeah, how closely were you following everything that Tennessee was doing while the portal? Were you in communication with Tennessee's coaches, in communication with any of the guys Tennessee was recruiting? What was it kind of like for you watching, I guess, from maybe afar or maybe a little bit closer?
Yeah, no, I was super tied in the whole time. They were, I think they were, partly reaffirming, hey, trust us, we've got a plan. We know you were the first to jump on board, and now we're losing a lot of guys we thought we had good shots at keeping. But I think the coolest thing for me was being the first guy in this class. I was able to help recruit other guys. So like I was calling Jalen, I was calling, texting Terrence and Day and Miles and all these guys. And so it's been honestly really cool to kind of be, even though I wasn't a returner from this past year, since I was committed and signed early, it almost felt like I was like acting like a returner in a sense of trying to get guys on board and have them come be a part of something special here. So it was really cool.
I've known Tyler, I've known Coach Barnes a long time, and I've had a chance to go watch him practice, and I know you have too. Man, those are intense practices. And the thing that's always, having been in this business for a long time, the thing that's always been most impressive to me is he walks that balance, that tightrope, as well as any coach I've ever seen. I mean, he coaches his guys hard, man. He's in your grill. He's pushing you to get better. But he never is over the top. And I know in talking to guys like a Nate Ament, guys down through the years who played for him, Chaz Lanier, they talk about what you just mentioned, his deep faith and the way off the court, it's like he separates the two. Yeah, he's going to push you to be at your best, but there's a deeper meaning, a deeper feeling for his guys. I wonder how much that resonates with players. Not only you, but have you heard other guys, certainly in this class, talk about that as well?
Yeah, I think, to start personally, that's the same way I approach it. Like basketball is something I do. It's not who I am. And I give my all on the court every time I step on there. Like I'm going to die out there trying to be the best player I can be. But then when I leave the gym, basketball is in the past. Like I'm just living, it's completely separate. And I think you get a sense of that from coach, like when it's time to talk about basketball on my visit, we're talking about ball, but then everything else is just life and stories and, just being normal. And I think that's the balance that you have to walk, especially as a head coach these days. It's tough as a player playing somewhere for a coach that's all ball all the time. And I think that's such a delicate balance, like you said, and I think that he does a really good job of that. And that's how you get guys to buy in, because they know that, okay, he wants the best out of me while I'm on the floor, but then when it's off the floor, I can go to him with anything. We can go get lunch. We can just, shoot it back and forth. It's not just all ball all the time, and it's not so like transactional. It's not just about basketball.
You've played a lot of ball, been in 4 different programs now with different coaches. As Chris just said, Rick, Coach Barnes, during practice, extremely intense, very hard on the guys. Like, do you feel like that's the type of coaching you respond to? How used to that are you over your life? And, what are your expectations for that type of coaching?
Yeah, I think it's, every place is different. I've had different situations everywhere I've been. But I think for me, I have had hard, every place they coach you hard, but I've definitely had some hard nosed coaches in the past. And I think for me in this stage of my career and what I want on the other side of this year, like that's what I want out of this year. I want to be coached hard. I want to be pushed. I want to be uncomfortable. I want my last year to be a year where I grow and really develop as a player because I want to play in the NBA. I want to have a long professional career. Like I would need to get everything that I possibly can out of this last year, and that was what was really attractive about Coach Barnes in Tennessee for me.
Tyler, when you talked about this a minute ago, when you were talking to some of the guys in this portal class, be it Day, be it Jalen, be it Terrence, and did you have a chance to talk much with Juke? I don't know if you did. What were those conversations like?
Yeah, just the fact that we got a chance to do something really special. I mean, the kind of the elephant in the room, I guess, is we've been to 3 Elite Eights in a row, but you can't get over the hump. And I think that this year we're really, Tennessee's making a real push to get over that hump. And like I said, me being the first guy in the class, it was pretty cool to be able to say, hey, like, let's go do this. Like, let's go get guys. Let's do something special. And so I think as you start to see kind of all the pieces come into place, it was easier to get some of those last ones to fall into place. I didn't have a chance to talk to Juke until after he had signed. But when he came on campus, I was there at dinner with him and saw him on campus a bunch. And so, yeah, it's just been really cool. Honestly, I think the message a lot of the time was like, hey, like, if, you want to be a pro, you want to go do these things and have these goals that you've talked about, like, I know there's no better place to do it than here. And the guys that we've gotten, that's been their mindset. Coach doesn't want guys that are here for the wrong reasons. And they were super honest and upfront with me about, this is going to be the hardest year of your life, but you want to be one of the 500 best players in the world. And, that's really hard. So what you're going to have to go through this year is really hard. So if that's what you want, then this is the place to be. And I think with all the guys in this class that they've really bought into that message.
I'm sure you've seen the critique or criticism of y'all's portal class phrased with the, there's only one ball. There's a lot of scorers. A lot of guys will have to maybe take fewer shots. I kind of a two-parter. Well, one, what does it say about, or why do you think that this can work? That guys can adjust to different roles and mesh together. And then two, I guess, what does it say about the group that you guys are, that all y'all understand that to at least a certain degree, that y'all are willing to sign up for, maybe fewer shots, but the greater good and a greater chance for a team to, achieve something it hasn't before.
Yeah, I think the first part is we're all coming here for the right reason, is we want to win. And I think that's the main thing. Secondly, I think you've seen it done the last couple of years with UConn winning 2 titles. I mean, those teams were so balanced. We've talked about that in the office. Like, I think the team, their second year with Cam Spencer and those guys, all 5 starters were between 10 and 15 points. And after Caravan gets drafted this year, all 5 of them are going to get drafted. And you don't have to score 20 plus points a game to go be a draft pick. You go win a national championship, and it's going to, teams care about winning. And I think we all understand that. We've all been at different places in our careers. Some have won, some haven't. But I think that we all know what we're coming here to do.
Yeah, Tyler, Chris Dorsch, a buddy of mine, did a great story, on you. And I know people have seen the clip of your workout shooting the basketball. So a couple of things. Let's have some fun here. What's the most threes you've made in a row in any workout? Can you remember?
Yeah, honestly, off the top of my head, it was probably that clip that went viral when I made like 68 or 69 in a row from the corner. And then at one point, I think I was like 131 for 132. So that's probably the most insane streak I can remember. But I've definitely had some of those where you're up in the 40s and 50s. But I think that's the top one.
The other thing, when I watched tape on you and talked to people, and I saw you play some last year, is your release. Has that come natural for you? I mean, is that something you've had to work on? I know you started at SMU, you played at TCU, didn't play much, and then just exploded at Belmont. How much has that been a part of your ability to get open and get shots off so quickly.
Yeah, I think I didn't have a slow or a quick release when I was in high school. I kind of shot the ball like behind my head, but when I got to college, it just kind of naturally quickened because just the window of time you have to shoot is so much smaller in college. And I remember one day like shooting with my dad back home when I come home for the summer, and he was like, "Your release is like more in front of your head now." And I hadn't even noticed, but we filmed my shot and it had changed. Back in high school, I used to kind of shoot behind my ear, and now it's like up by my temple. But it is a thing. I've gone through phases where I've tweaked my mechanics. But I think a lot of it is just like how maniacal I am about my training, and every possible footwork I want to have down, because if I catch the ball and my outside foot's down first, I got to be able to shoot it. So like I drill every kind of footwork possible, of every situation, off a handoff, a screen away, transition, off the dribble. Because I know for me, like the window I have is so small, but I need to be able to get the shot up at any time. So I think part of it was natural. When I got to college, it just quickened. But a lot of it is, how much time and work I put in.
Right.
You sort of just touched on it, but the other thing that stood out to me watching some of your tape was your ability to hit shots on the move and shots that look off balance and look like bad shots when you attempt them. What goes into the training to hit those shots, and when was that something you talked about your shot changing and your release getting quicker in college? When was that something that you made, or maybe a coach made, that a point of emphasis for you?
Yeah, I knew there was one kind of August down period in between the summer and fall semester when I was at my first year at TCU. I kind of all my shots were flat, and I couldn't figure it out why, but my guide hand was kind of getting in front of the ball, and it was kind of preventing my shot from having its natural arc. And so that August, my dad and I set up a tripod. We were filming my shot. I mean, I really drilled and drilled and drilled. I watched a lot of Clay Thompson, and so kind of his mechanics were similar to mine, like bringing the ball up the side of my body, and everything being in a straight line. So that was probably the only like dedicated time where I was like, I need to fix this in my shot. And then once, I've always trained on the move, and I think as I've gotten older and older and older, I shoot less and less spot shots. Just I don't get them much in games, and it's kind of it's good form shooting, maybe as a cool down or a warm up, but it's not the bulk of my work now in the gym. And so I think when I got really I knew it was going to take a lot of those my first year at Belmont, but really as going into my second year, I mean, I knew I was going to be a marked man, and get the chest to chest treatment all game and top locks and denials, and so I just wasn't going to get spot shots, and so I drilled with Luke Smith, who was our player development and assistant coach. We were in the gym every single day of doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, we tried to make our workouts harder than the shots I'm going to take in games. There's a lot of like kind of scientific stuff about learning that I kind of dove into of shooting different shots every single rep. Like I don't rep the same shots over and over, because I'm never going to get the same shot twice in a row in a game. So I have managers chasing me all across the court. Luke's got a foam roller trying to block shots. Like I do all that stuff. And I really do think it translated a lot this year, because you look at my shot attempts, I did not have a lot of spot attempts compared to like handoffs and spot ups, especially once Nick got hurt, our point guard, and kind of my shot types changed a lot, and so I was having to kind of run around and create for myself off off handoffs and off screens.
You sound like. I tell you, you sound like, in describing your prep and the way you work, you sound like a guy by the name who was a decent shooter, Chris Lofton, because he was the same way. He prepped and great on the move. He would shoot shots that you'd think, man, he's off balance. It's a bad shot, but he'd make them. But it was just funny hearing you talk about sort of what you do and all the little nuances, because that's exactly the way he used to prep when he played at Tennessee. Before we get you out of here, Tyler, Ryan asked you what I wanted to ask. I want to ask you a different version of it. I would think, and I want you to answer the question. I don't want to speak for you, but good scores, great scores, want to play with other scores because it's going to open up things. I mean, you're the ultimate no-leave guy. People are not going to leave you, and they can't leave you if you got a guy like a Terrence Hill, you got a Day-Day, guys who are penetrating and creating. And to me, as you look at this team and the way Rick and his staff have constructed this team, you guys got so many options that it's going to be hard to shadow one or even two players, because last year they struggled to have more than two on the floor at one time who could get their own shot or could score. I wonder, as a scorer, as a guy who is a proven scorer, how inviting that is.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the attractiveness of our team and why it was so easy to get guys here. You know, selfishly, I think I'm the best shooter in the country, and so that opens the floor up, especially for guys that penetrate and get downhill. And now you add, all these guys on this team. We all do different things, but we can all go get 15 or 20 any night. And I touched on that both those UConn teams earlier, but you look at those teams and, Cam Spencer might have a down game, but Tristan Newton and Alex Caravan both have 20 and they win a game by 30. And, another night it's a different group of guys. And I think, just spitballing ideas with the coaches in the office and on the court, it's just like we just present so many problems offensively for other teams. I mean, all these guys can handle it and score it. We can all shoot it. It's just it presents a lot of problems for teams defensively. And I think as a player, one, like you said, that can score it but wants to win, I think that's what you need. You can't have it in this day and age. To get deep in the tournament, you got to have 3, 4, 5 guys that can go get it any night, because you just can't rely on 1 or 2 guys for the entire year. Sometime in March something's going to happen. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody has a one-off night, and there's your season. But if you've got 6,000 points of scoring coming in, I think you're in a really good position to win games.
Tyler, last thing I got for you. You mentioned being in communication with other guys y'all ended up landing. Was there a player you worked the hardest on or talked the most to or quickly built a strong relationship with?
I think kind of each guy had their, unique perspective, I guess. Like, I was here for a couple guys' visits, and I was able to go to recruiting dinners and stuff with them and be around. With some guys, like we had mutual friends that one went to high school with, so I got, I'm texting and calling him on, through that connection. I wouldn't say there was one more than any of the others, but I think I had, kind of my hand in a little bit of all of them. And so it's just been a really cool situation to be in, for sure.
Hey, Tyler, man, it's been great. We really appreciate it. And I know I speak for a lot of the Tennessee fans, all the Tennessee fans out there and the Hoop Junkies, that we look forward to watching you guys all come together and play this year. It's a different world now in college hoops, as you well know, and teams turn over. I mean, you look at that Michigan National Championship team last year. It's not all that unusual, to bring in 4 or 5 guys, and then it gets down to who gels and how quickly you gel. But, boy, just looking at what they've been able to do, and I know the research they did on who they wanted to bring in, starting with you, I think it's should be a fun hoop season. I mean, we look forward to seeing you guys, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler. It's great to catch up with him. Great insight on sort of how this class came together. I love hearing the stories about his regiment and what regiment and just sort of what he does to prepare. And he's right, man. I mean, you see kids at the high school level that go out and shoot 100 shots, but they're just, someone's catching it, passing it right back to them, shooting sort of you stand still, maybe you move 2 or 3 feet. That's not reality in college basketball. People are all, he said, chesting up, they're grabbing, they're fighting over picks. You got to be able to catch and shoot coming off the pick. And again, I would invite people to go read Chris Dortch's story and to go watch that video of Tyler where he makes, what did he say he made? How many in a row? 60 something?
I think it was 68 in a row, 132 out of that, something like that.
Just go watch that. And the thing that jumped out to me is his release. So, I mean, again, what I told him, there are never any guarantees. And some kids play better together than you do with others. But I know that Rick, having talked to him about this class, he joined us a few weeks ago. here on the RTI Lowdown, they did a lot of homework on every one of these kids, and not just basketball homework, but and Tyler touched on this, what they want, what their why is. And I think every one of these kids know, and he mentioned it, Tennessee's never been to a Final Four, never, and they've had tons of success. I mean, Rick's taken this program to a level, quite frankly, as somebody who goes back to the mid-'70s of not covering, but watching Tennessee basketball. I mean, King and Grunfeld were my sort of first two. I don't think I ever thought I would see the program get to a point where they went to 3 straight Elite Eights. But, when you get there, Ryan, man, you taste that. It makes it all the more agonizing that you're not able to take that next step. And I know every one of these kids understand that they can be a part of the group that can get Tennessee over that hump, that proverbial hump, and do something that's never been done. And I think the anticipation among fans, among the staff, among the kids on that team to see just what they can do next year, this will probably be as anticipated a hoop season as Tennessee's had in a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. And especially when you consider that, the one I always point to was the second Grant and Admiral year. Well,
right.
It was a 5-7 Tennessee football team, and we'll see what Tennessee football does this fall. But it's certainly a different level of Tennessee football program that Josh Heupel has now, and there's still that level of an excitement for what this hoops team can be. So Tyler was great. That was fascinating, like you said, fascinating listening to him talk about all those drills and not replicating the same shot twice and all the footwork stuff. And he's the guy that he was the first one in, and you talk about him being able to play with other players. I feel like he's almost the best fit of any of these guys of fitting with these other guys Tennessee has and some of the stuff Tennessee's done in the past offensively. So should be awful exciting to watch. And I'm just speaking from the media standpoint, excited to once they get here to hear the reports and go watch them practice a couple times because it's going to be really, really exciting.
We've had Terrence Hill on here now. We've had Tyler, both for you guys to cover the team on a daily basis. I saw Juke's interview on the Tennessee Network, and it sounds like you got a lot of kids who are really smart and it will be good interviews. So I think all the way around it's going to be a lot of pressure. I mean, listen, it's not sugarcoated. There's going to be a lot of pressure on these kids. Tennessee's paying a ton of money, over $15 million, to bring these guys in. But you know what? That's the name of the game. If you're going to compete at the highest level now, they're swimming in the same waters with the other schools that want to win a national title. So there'll be pressure, but I think these kids welcome that. They understand what's going to be expected. I doubt, having now talked to several of them, that no one's going to put more pressure on them than they put on themselves. And I think that's where Rick's at his best, is he keeps it what's right in front of you. And it's you're not looking down the road. You're not thinking about what we haven't done and what we can do. It's that practice. It's that game. It's getting better individually and then coming together as a group. But no, our thanks to Tyler Lundblade for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ryan, for sitting in. I tell you what, man, Bob better be careful. You may just knock him out of the booth with your performance tonight. He's, what's the old saying? If you can't make the club, you're sitting in the tub. So you miss an outing. If you're a pitcher and you miss an outing, another guy steps up and throws a 3-hitter and goes a complete game, which is basically what you did today. That other guy, the existing guy, better be careful. Hey, couple house cleaning items. No, number one, congratulations to Dylan Sampson and Byron Young, both returning to campus to get their degrees. That's awesome. I had a chance to get to know both those kids through stories I did on them when they were at Tennessee. I'd love to see that. The guys come back, and Byron has just been hell on wheels in NFL. And one of the better stories in college football in the last decade. The kid was working at, I think, 7-Eleven and General Dollar, and goes to prep school and ends up, and now he's one of the best young pass rushers in the NFL. The other thing is baseball. Talking to some people, looks like for South Carolina, they're probably going to start Amp Phillips. No, he's their ace. He's their Friday guy, or one of their top 2 guys. He only pitched a 1 1/3 Thursday against Vandy. They chased him pretty early, gave up 4 runs. Doesn't have a great ERA, and with their record, he doesn't have a good win-loss record, but he is probably their best and has been their most consistent arm this year. I look for Tennessee to go with Appenzeller. And talking to some folks, I think you'll see. I don't think that's written in blood yet, Ryan, but I do think there's a pretty good chance that he will be the starter for Tennessee on Tuesday when the Gamecocks and the Vols start. It'll be the third game that day. I think it's a 5:30 start there at Hoover.
Yep.
Hoover met 4 games. There's the third game. Tennessee can win that game. And they would play Arkansas the next day. That game also would be a 5:30 game.
Yeah, Appenzeller makes a lot of sense. He threw on Thursday in Oklahoma City, so plenty of rest. And, Tennessee been searching for a third starter with Mac out. And the way these regionals work, you're sometimes pushed beyond those 3. You need guys to fill in different roles that maybe they haven't done for most of the season. Appenzeller started one midweek game a couple weeks back, but certainly not against that level of competition. So, would be really intriguing, and I think an option that makes a lot of sense for Tennessee. So we'll be curious to see what Josh Elander 100% decides to go with.
Yeah, I know Josh would love to see him. I don't care if he goes 3 innings or 6 innings. I don't know that they're going to push it, but to see him have a good outing, a really good, solid, consistent outing going into the NCAA regional. I think he's if you ask me right now, who are the top 2 or 3 key players for Tennessee to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, Appenzeller would certainly be in my 3.
No doubt. I think it's almost all pitchers, too, because of what we talked about. This lineup's been so balanced that if any given player, as important they could be to a lineup, has a bad couple games, it feels like guys can pick him up, and this pitching staff's been thin. So they need those top guys at their best, and then they need some of those fringe guys or maybe guys that haven't been great this season to put their best foot forward and be able to throw the ball as well as they have all season here at the end of the year.
Yeah, and kudos to Josh Elander. Called a lot of flack early on. And, that was going to happen. You replace a guy like Tony Vitello, unless you're just kicking everybody's butt, they're always going to question you. You've not been a head coach. And I said a few weeks back, I said, hey, if this team gets hot and makes the tournament, which they did, all the people that jumped off, there are no seats for you. You can't get back on. So those seats are all taken. And we'll see what happens. But no, I think this team has been able to pick itself back up. When they played poorly, I go back to being swept by Vandy. I guess every game was a walk-off.
Yep.
Turns out to be a not-so-good Vandy team. But, boy, to come back and to win series against teams that can certainly be in the College World Series, in Alabama, Texas, says a lot about this team. The way when they needed to play well and they needed to win a series, they did, and that goes straight to the head coach. So kudos to Josh and his staff for getting this team back on track, and now they got a chance to make some noise potentially in the postseason. You made plenty of noise, young man, and I'm telling you, Bob Baskerville's got his work cut out to get back in your seat. And you be sure when we get off, I'll make sure he knows that we know it's like that guy, as I said. Guys comes in, hadn't pitched a whole lot in the year, and he comes in and it's just lights out. That's been you, Ryan. So I appreciate you, Ryan Shumpert. We appreciate Tyler Lundblade for joining us tonight on the RTI Lowdown. We'll be back next Sunday, SEC tournament. I guess they announce on Monday, right? The Monday after the tournament. We'll find out where Tennessee will go in the NCAA tournament, the times, the regionals, the pairings. So we won't know next Sunday, but we'll at least know what happens in Hoover. But, Ryan, thanks a lot, my friend. And stay by the phone, man. We may need you soon.
Big off season coming up here with the show on pause, so I might have to reassess some things. But right. No, appreciate you having me on, and Bob for letting me fill in, and enjoyed it as always.
You too, buddy. So long, everybody. See you next Sunday.